everybody. We're really pleased to have this webinar today for so many reasons. To be sitting here talking about a full panel of clinical level products in the male contraceptive space is somewhat surreal. We've all been fighting for this, and here we are. So I'm really delighted to be able to have MCI host this today. So we're really excited also because this is the largest group of registrants we've had. So we have clearly the all-stars of the field drawing in all of this. And I wanted to do a bit of housekeeping. Sorry, I have an elderly dog. Before we get started, since I'm assuming several folks here have not been to one of our lemonade stand sessions before, I wanted to give a little bit of background. So the lemonade stands came about back during COVID. One of the things we realized was happening with the shutdown is that as travel plans were canceled and meetings were rescheduled and people had these pockets of time pop up, we found that we were having these really great organic conversations that we just hadn't had the time to have before. So in an attempt to capitalize on that, we decided we wanted to start having webinars that were more conversational and sort of in that whole mindset of making lemonade out of lemons. The lemonade stand was born. And so you'll notice that this is not a very formal webinar. So you all have control of your microphones. We have open Q&A. It's not shut down for any of that. This has worked for us and we have not regretted this approach yet. So hopefully we will continue.
So Heather?
Yes?
I'm just going to interrupt for a second because it has Stephanie Page on my picture as if I'm Stephanie, which I'm not. And I don't see Stephanie.
Stephanie's here.
Okay, so I don't understand why.
I think because you had her link, Diana.
Okay, so we each had our own personal link that I didn't click on. I clicked on hers.
She sent you hers. So yeah, I think you can still change your name though in the...
You're updated now.
Somebody did. Okay, thank you.
You're updated.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt.
See, not Diana, now what control of your own microphones. No, this is exactly what this is meant to be. This is a small field that we've always been grateful for. We're all friends. We all know each other. So all I would say is just you have access to your own microphones for questions. We do have a big group. So if you can use the raise your hand feature for questions after the panelists are done. We'd like to do all the questions at the end. And then you can also feel free to start putting questions in the chat as we go. We'll be monitoring that. And then as the questions do start, if you have follow-up, we're happy to make those connections offline so folks can come in after you and you can take deeper discussions later on. I think that's all I wanted to share, other than just to do a quick intro. And we're going to have everybody do just a little overview of where they are with their programs and then try and get to the Q&A as quickly as possible so we can have some conversations, because these are the folks that have been to FDA. These are the folks that have gone through different CRO arrangements, so ask questions. That's why we have them as the leaders in our field. So without further ado, we're going to start off with Kevin Eisenfratz from Contraline. They have a long-acting reversible contraceptive method called ATOM, and this has been really exciting. And Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're coming up on 1 year for some of your patients in your clinical trials in Australia. So Kevin's going to be telling us a bit more about the ATOM work at Contraline. Then we're going to move to Akash and Naja from YourChoice Therapeutics, who just started their first in human in November or was it December? December. Okay. December of 2023. And that's been super exciting. And being able to really trace that through from Gunda Georg, who found that molecule originally, all the way through to the clinic now is exciting. And then third, we're going to have Diana Blythe presenting on behalf of the Nestor and Testosterone trial, which is the light years ahead of many of us, just wrapping up phase 2 clinical. So we're going to get an update from them, and then we'll dive right into the questions. So I am going to stop yapping and turn the microphone over to Kevin Eisenfratz. Kevin?
Thanks, Heather. And it's great to see so many familiar faces on this call. I'll try to keep this very casual. So my name is Kevin Eisenfratz. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Contraline. Contraline is a biotech company. We're based in Charlottesville, Virginia. We've been working on this since around 2015 is when I began the work to develop ATOM. Atom is a vas occlusive male contraceptive. So what does that mean? We basically are creating a gel that we're implanting into the vas deferens. The vas deferens are a pair of tubes that transport sperm. You might be familiar with the vasectomy procedure where the vas deferens are cut or ligated. We're simply injecting this little biocompatible gel inside. But our goal is for this gel to last for a few years. It's non-hormonal and also reversible. One, this gel is non-permanent, but two, we're looking to make it reversible on demand. So if a patient changes their mind, they can get the gel removed. I kind of dubbed this as the IUD for men because there is no long-lasting reversible option for men, although some people don't love that analogy. Anyhow, it took us a few years to develop this product. And as Heather mentioned, we started our first in-human trial at the end of 22 and really started ramping up early 23. So I want to talk a little bit specifically about our experience running this trial. This trial that we call the ATOM study is a first in human, which means it's the first time it's ever been done in the world. First time anyone's ever put a hydrogel like this into the vas deferens. It's primarily a safety study. So we are looking at what are the side effects that come with this, anything and everything. And we're also, because this is a medical device, we are able to actually start to look for early signs of efficacy as well. The first question I'll anticipate is people ask me, why Australia? Why did we go there even though our company is based in the US? There's quite a number of reasons for that. One is that Australia has kind of been a hotbed of innovation for early stage device trials, especially in urology. Some of the best urology devices have done their early feasibility work there. It's also was a really quick, kind of faster to get started there and then bring the trials later to the United States. The US FDA accepts the data that we generate in Australia. Maybe the most importantly is Australia is one of the highest vasectomy rates in the world. And so we've seen that even though our product Atom is not really competing with vasectomy, it is very comparable. If the rates of vasectomy are high in a country, it's probably that there's a lot of men interested in male contraceptives like Atom. And so we basically actually saw exactly just that. So our trial was 25 patients. We basically did all of the recruitment ourselves for it, using social media advertising. Every time we put out that, hey, we're recruiting for this trial, we got a lot of interest. We had actually over 2,000 men in Australia who wanted to be in the trial, again, for 25 spots. And out of those over 2,000, about 1,500 of them actually qualified, meaning that they sort of passed the high-level screening criteria. And from there, we actually started screening and found our ideal 25 men for this study. We implanted the Atom hydrogel with 100% success rate. So what that means is every procedure we did was successful. We actually...
Okay, that's cool. So you're doing the immobilization
Sorry,
with the beads?
Excuse me, if you're not on mute, thank you. That'd be great. On average, our procedures took anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. They definitely got faster and faster with more practice. It took about 3 procedures before a urologist was extremely proficient with doing it because of how similar it is to vasectomy. And we, the last 2 cases we did were actually under local anesthesia. The patients were awake and they were done in 12 minutes. So, I mean, it's just pretty incredible to see how far this has come and that this is actually a real thing, that people are getting this, they're interested, and it's pretty easy to perform. We're now following these patients for safety and efficacy. We've been really, really pleased with the data. We're not publicizing it too much because we are preparing to publish that data this year. But overall, we've been really happy with the safety and the efficacy profile we're seeing. As Heather mentioned, we have patients that are now reaching the 1-year mark. In terms of the next step for us, I think something that's really interesting for this audience is that Contraline is, I think, the only medical device here on the panel. The other approaches are drugs. And so with medical device trials, when you hear the word first in human, what that means is really, this is a learning experience. This is the first time anyone's done this. We're taking our learnings, And the device is not sort of quote unquote final when medical device companies do first in human trials. And so we're now in the process of actually finalizing the device for our pivotal trial and commercial use. And so our next big step, this is a really big year for us. We're going to be showing the reversibility of Atom. So not just that it works and it's safe, but that we can remove the gel and patients' fertility is restored, obviously safely. And then we're also gearing up for our phase 2 clinical trial as well, which we hope to be a global study, including sites in the United States. So that's a little bit about Contraline, about Atom, and I'm sure I can answer questions at the end. Really appreciate you guys having me.
Thanks so much, Kevin. That is so exciting to hear. And congratulations, truly, because I know this is, I mean, this has been a true labor of love for you. You've been working on it since you were quite young. I always imagine you, just quickly, how old were you when you started working on this in earnest?
So, I mean, I started thinking about male contraception. I actually wrote an essay on why there's no male birth control in 2010 before I got into university. Was working on reproductive biology at the University of Virginia, not male contraception, but more on the egg biology side of things. And then I started working on this right after college, basically, and been doing this for about 9 years now.
Yeah.
Full time.
I mean, this has really been your life's work. So it goes beyond just a successful business. Congratulations. I think it's really exciting to hear about your success.
Thank you.
Is it okay to ask questions?
Well, we were going to hold the questions till the end, if that's okay, Diana.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. All right. Then we can move on to your choice if that works. Akash, are you going to take the mic?
I can at least start, and then Nadia and Gunda, if you can add and correct me as we go along the path.
Perfect.
I will just start to say about my fellow panelists. I don't think that we as YourChoice Therapeutics would be here if it was not for the panelists. If it had not been for Diana and Min putting Gunda and Deborah together, I don't know if 529 would exist. If it was not for MCI giving us cash, I don't know if we would have been able to develop. You know, it's hard for me to give Kevin a compliment, but I am gracious out here. But Kevin also kind of established, at least in Silicon Valley, that contraception can be a startup. And I think literally, one of the first people to just focus solely on contraception and raise it in the Valley, which I think has also helped us. And I will also say, Diana Blythe, I think, carries the heaviest cross of us all of just being the first to run a clinical trial and establish, at least with the regulatory body, that this is also possible. So I think that we've gotten a lot of credit for being in the clinic, and I don't think that we would have gotten in the clinic if not everyone else had really helped us do this. And so, like Heather said, we're developing a hormone-free contraceptive pill for men. It was developed by Gunda at the University of Minnesota, and we envision it as a pill that men will take every day, and it decreases sperm count. At least it has done so in mice, rat, dogs, and non-human primates. We just need to prove it out in humans. And like Kevin, our phase 1 clinical trial was only to establish safety. That study started December 4th. If I'm not mistaken, or maybe December 11th, one of those days, and is still ongoing. And I think we're almost at a point where it's almost over. We had our last dose escalation review committee an hour ago, so I think it is coming to a close. I don't know what else there is to add here.
Yeah. I think not too much at this point because it's not final, so we cannot go into the nitty-gritty details of the trial, but we can say it's been all going according to plan. It is 529 is safe and was tolerated by the subject. So yeah, it's super exciting.
I think the only other thing that I would add is that I think the three of us are all working on different approaches to male contraception, and yet our goal is all the same. Our approaches are different, but what it has resulted in, I think, because our approaches are different, is maybe we've had different interactions with regulatory agencies. And so, as I look at Kevin and Diane, I'm jealous that they have biomarkers that they can look for in a single dose or in implantation that you can say, am I happy with what you have here? Really, I'm grateful for the safety and a large safety window. But I think for us, we just have to be more patient, which I think is not something that is easy for me to just sit here and wait and say, I can't wait until we show that that we see the decline in sperm counts in men.
That's great. And I'm hoping that's one of the things that can come from this is the sharing of that knowledge, because we do have a small community. And, for MCI, we also have done a bit of work with on the regulatory side of things, trying to get some clarity, and those reports it was wonderful. We were able to share our questions that we were going to send to the FDA with, believe everybody on this panel, just trying to make sure we're getting these answers together. And it is another benefit of being in sort of a field that's at the front lines there. So that's the other thing, is to put you guys front and center so folks know who's doing it, who they can ask the questions, and hopefully we can get into that a little bit more. So and 1 hour ago, finishing up your dose escalation review committee, like hot off the presses.
We were ready. We were ready today.
Yes. Well, thank you. And then Diana, I mean, we've been definitely paving the way for you to. Oh, Gunda, did you want to jump in and say something about the?
I wanted to say something. So, our team did go, and that included Heather to Nottingham to witness the dosing of the first, the first dosing. And, this for me, after working 20 some years on all of this, it was an emotional moment. In terms of, my God, we're there. And then also, oh my God, if something happens now on the first dosing. So it was sort of mixed emotions, I have to say. And I'm so happy that nothing until what happened at that moment where we were there. And, with the device, you can probably, maybe the risk is not as high, but if you have a new chemical entity going for the first time into a human being, it's still a little apprehensive. Even so, it looked good in the animals and all of that. But I thought I wanted to share that because it's probably not that often that one of the inventors, and I want to say that Dr. Shariella, who is on the audience, he is a co-inventor. It's not very often that the co-inventors of a drug are actually going to be there when the first dosing happens. And so, thanks for, I guess, enabling that. And I guess I just thought I'll share that with all of you.
Thanks, Gunda.
I will just add briefly that man was also very colorful first participant to be dosed with either 529 or placebo. He was an interesting individual, to say the least.
And excited, very proud to be the first.
I had the same reaction, Gunda. So watching our first procedure was definitely a pinch me moment of like, wow. But even with device and our device, I mean, there's actually a lot of complexity. And so, after years of developing and manufacturing it and the complexity around that, which is actually pretty difficult, it's like, oh man, I hope the kit assembly goes well. I hope this delivery device works well. I hope the urologist actually performs like he says he will. And then, the procedure, and it was quite something to watch the first time.
Yep, for sure.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys. And so I think, Diana, we can move on to you now and hear what it's like another phase ahead.
Well, I'll actually, if it's okay, share slides. And let's make sure that I actually do that properly, because that's always a problem for me. Let's go. Why isn't it? It's not doing nothing. There we go. Okay. You can see that? And
Yes, we can see them.
you can see them, but are they not in present? They're not in presentation.
They're not in presentation mode yet, though, no.
Okay. Okay, now we're going. Now it went away.
It's thinking about it.
Well, I'll just say while it's thinking about it, that I'm really jealous that that Adam can go through a device pathway, because that is so much easier. Okay. This is not. Let me, maybe I can try starting that over again. Let's try that again. Because it's not working. Well, this is one of those things where we have platform issues, because I have where my PowerPoint should be, I now have a black screen, and I don't know what that's about.
Would you like me to present the slides?
I guess so. I
All right.
really would rather be able to do it myself, but I can't quite figure out how to. That it's the whole thing is black right now. So let's try exiting that,
Okay.
restarting the program. I wonder. You know what? I wonder if it's that I'm not on the VPN. Let me try that. Well, am I still connected to audio?
You are. We can
Because
still.
right now I have a blank screen with a wheel of death spitting on it, and
Oh
I
no.
don't know how to escape this and get to you. So maybe you should do something else and come back to me while I, like, I don't know, reboot.
And Kevin, you have the slides though, right?
I do, yeah.
Okay. So Diane, if you want to reboot and log back in, we can maybe take a question, see if anybody has any questions, and then we can start your presentation if that works.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay. So I guess I say that, and I'm trying to see who all, let's see if I can get the whole thing here. Does anybody have any questions to start off with for the first two presenters, for Kevin or Akash or Gunda or Nadia? I don't think I see any hands.
I'll raise my hand if not.
You know, I was going to say, I got.
Well, I feel like a lot of times, we sitting in MCI, we tend to, we're enmeshed in all this, so we are aware of all the backstories and things like that. But I always thought it's so compelling, the story of Gunda and the University of Minnesota team connecting with YourChoice Therapeutics. So I was hoping you guys could share for everybody on the call now that may not be aware of that partnership and how that arose and how you started collaborating. It's quite a nice story for us. We love telling.
I can at least maybe start the story of how MCI played a little matchmaker in this situation. We I think met Gunda. I think Nadia and I both met Gunda for the first time in San Francisco at the MCI panel, at the MCI event that they put together. And I think that ultimately resulted, at least from our side, a fascination and interest in trying to collaborate and work together. And I think with Gunda, we had a lot of journeys. We started working together, then we bothered her to work with us, and I think Vadim is also on the call. We also bothered Vadim to work on a COVID antiviral that we worked on. And then shortly thereafter went back to contraception and got to work together again. So that is how I remember things happening. Gunda, I don't know if I'm misremembering or if something else had happened.
No, this was what they call an ideation event. And a lot of people got together, and we, had a lot of interesting discussions. And also we got to know new people that we had not actually met before. And so, and with Akash and Nadia, it was sort of like real easy. They're easy to get along with. They're very enthusiastic of what they're doing. And so we just kind of started working together, and then eventually, I guess this 529 molecule came up, and they took it and they ran with it. That's all I can say. And I have been so amazed how the two of them have, put advisory boards together and pushed. And, this is only possible with a biotech type of company. That would have never happened with Bristol Myers Squibb or any of the big firms, right? I mean, because they devoted themselves, I think, 24/7 to this project. And the success is that really between, the patent was approved, and October, the patent was approved, and in December, the clinical trial started. And so, this was just, incredible what those guys did. And they have to get the credit for all of this. I mean, we did the basic work, but really, getting it to the clinic. I mean, these guys were just incredible in getting this done so fast.
Gunda, thank you so much for your kind words.
I see Charles has a question.
Yeah.
Charles, do you want to jump in?
Okay, I'm good, everyone. So, Charles Ume, and I'm calling from Nigeria. I think I might be the only African here, and I'm privileged to be among this meeting. And so I have a question for Kevin regarding the product that Contraline is developing. So my question is basically on the active content of the gel that is being given to a patient. I read from your website that it's non-hormonal. So I was like thinking, because based on the knowledge that I have on female reversible methods, most of them, like the implants, the injectables, and the pills, are actually hormonal. And they actually act by interfering with the hormone inside the woman's body. So I wanted to ask, since the Adams gel is not hormonal, what is the active ingredient that is contained in the gel, and how does it interfere with production of sperm, or how does it destroy sperm? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. So the mechanism of action of our gel is actually purely mechanical or physical. So we're literally plugging up the vas deferens, and this gel acts like a filter. So you have a polymer gel. Imagine this matrix or this network, and this network has pores, but they're really, really, really tiny. I mean, talking on the orders of nanometer size. And sperm are, 100 times bigger than the pores of our gel. So they literally are blocked by this filter. They can't travel through. Of course, the gel is able to absorb liquids and slowly diffuse those through. But there is no, in short, there is no active ingredient in our product like there is in a drug. The mechanism of action is purely a physical one.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Charles. And I just want to make sure we check with Kevin. I don't see Diana back yet. Am I missing?
No, I don't see her back yet.
Okay.
No.
And Stephanie, just holler if you want to jump in and take the presentation. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I guess that's what I did.
So why don't we take Lonnie's question?
No worries.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Lonnie.
Lonnie and Jochen, hi.
Hi, guys. This is for the YourChoice team. In dealing with FDA, how did you find them about being amenable to doing less for your phase 1 than you're going to have to end up doing for your phase 2? How reasonable was FDA in all these conversations for what you guys have to do in phase 1 versus subsequent phases with couples?
Well, let me start by saying I'm also jealous of you, because you will also, after your phase 1, show that if your product works or not. So I'm also jealous.
Crossing fingers.
Across all the things.
Right.
So the question was, how amenable was the FDA to suggesting what was needed to do? I will say that we followed ICH guidelines, and I think we stuck to what was stated as potential rules. So for example, I'll take 2 steps back. We actually did all of the studies that FDA asked us to do. We did not backpedal. We did not try and get out of any of them. But we also followed ICH guidelines when submitting for our clinical trial. And so if the guidelines are also clear. If you're doing a single dose, which I imagine that's where you guys want to start, you can move forward. There is an example given for doing a single dose in a rat, single dose in a dog, and being able to move forward. But but I think contraception also puts itself in a unique position where we still have to ask patients to be or patients to use various methods of contraception as participants of the clinical trial. So irrespective of whether the female partner in our study is fertile or not, we require the male individual to use a condom in case there's transfer of 529 through sperm, which we don't believe is the case, but just in case. And further, and also we require, if the female partner is of childbearing age, to use a high method of contraception, which includes an IUD or hormonal method. So I think the guidelines for what is required to run a clinical trial is relatively straightforward. And if the FDA is asking for more, I would do that. Nadia, I don't think, yeah, that's how I remembered doing our clinical talks, non-clinical talks.
Yeah.
In fact, even though we did not run the study in the United States, we basically followed FDA's suggestions for our phase 1. Even though I think, we get a lot of credit for being very fast, and I think we were very fast, but I think our team was willing to do more, and we decided to do less, just to make sure that we took a step-by-step approach. Because again, I think the three of us, right, all three of us are doing something that has been done for the first time, and Lonnie, y'all will be doing something for the first as well. But for us, it is, how do you build trust with a regulator? How do you build trust with the male participant? How do you build trust with the female partner who will have a male partner that is on a male method? And how do you build trust with the physician who may be prescribing this product as well? And so for us, it is just continue to take a step-by-step approach, build trust by people who are all stakeholders in this project.
Akash, I'm curious, why did you go to the UK then if you satisfied all the preclinical requirements for the FDA? I talked about why we chose Australia. I'm curious why UK for you.
My joke for you would be, you chose the colony, I chose the imperial. It's
a bad joke.
That is a side joke. My main thought, and this comes back to when Nadia and I, and also Gunda, were running a clinical trial for COVID-19. We had to import drug from the UK back to the United States. From Europe to the United States. And I remember the date that it happened. It was March 14th. We were doing the shipment from Europe to the United States. And on March 13th, the president of the United States said in a little chat from the Oval, actually, I don't even remember where, but I remember reading the transcript. It said, "We're stopping all cargo shipments from Europe to the United States." And literally, we had drug for a COVID-19 drug being shipped from Europe to the United States. And it took us, I think, 3 additional weeks to try and get drug out of Europe to the United States. And so that, do you call it trauma? That experience lives in my brain rent-free. And so after that, I was just like, if I don't have to ship drug from some other country to another country to run a clinical trial, and I can run it, I will do that. And so we had partnered with the same folks who made our drug for the COVID-19 drug to also make this drug, And so ultimately, when they said we can also run this clinical trial, I thought, okay, great. One logistical issue, which has given me a nightmare in the past, is over. And so that's kind of how I made that decision. It was also very economically priced.
Right.
But not with a 43.5% cash back.
Right.
Awesome. Well, I think we might have Diana back. Is that right, Stephanie?
Yeah, I'm under Stephanie again.
Hi. Okay. But you're here.
I'm here.
Do you want us to do the slides for you?
I think am I not sharing or not sharing? I'm going to share. I'm going to try to share and see if that works. Because is it sharing?
Perfect. Yes, perfect.
Okay, now let's see if it advances. Okay, yeah, okay, wonderful. All right, now let me just get rid of this thing. Okay, so I'm the only one who has slides, so I feel very formal. But this is very informal. This is obviously the contraceptive methods available to everybody, and the top row is the most effective with a failure rate of about 1%. The middle row at about 8%, and the bottom row, which has to be used with every active intercourse, has higher failure rate. So, and then for men, we have existing methods of vasectomy, which is very effective, but not easily reversible. And we have condoms, which have a high failure rate and have very low acceptability. Men need and want more options, and we think they need an effective reversible male method. So this is our program. We have products for women, and we have a number of products for women that actually have reached the market. We have additional in the pipeline. And for men, it's been a long process. I have another slide that starts at 2005, and all of the things that are now in active clinical trials were over in the IND stage. So, but I'm going to talk about Nest-T gel. And I'll just start by explaining how the hormonal approach works. Most people know this, but maybe not everybody. This is a feedback loop with the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the testes. The testosterone in the testes is controlled by LH that's secreted from the pituitary. And that's the biomarker we can use to see if things are going to work, is if LH and FSH are inhibited, we look forward to sperm not being present someday. But the testosterone in the testes needs to be maintained at about 50 to 100 times the amount that's in the serum in order to support spermatogenesis. If we add a progestin the same way we do with female methods, we feedback that on that loop, and we shut down the pituitary hormones, which stops the production of testosterone in the testes and stops spermatogenesis. However, it also lowers the serum levels of testosterone and stops sperm function and ejaculation and a lot of things that men would not want as a side effect. So we have to replace the T at the normal physiologic levels so that sexual function and everything is working fine, but it doesn't reaccumulate in the testes at a high enough level to restart spermatogenesis. So we take away testosterone and give it back, but that's okay. So now we've managed to get this into a concentrated combination gel that is in a canister that delivers a metered dose, and each actuation is about half a teaspoon, which they apply one actuation to each shoulder. And that, with a lot of preliminary, about 15 years of preliminary work to show that it's safe in a dose escalation study, and then in a sperm inhibition study to get to being able to do a contraceptive efficacy trial where people are at risk of pregnancy. So these are couples who use the method for contraception. It's a long trial. And this is part of the problem with a hormonal or maybe non-hormonal approach to a method, is you have to be able to show for some period of time. So there's a screening and suppression phase of 8 to 24 weeks, an efficacy phase of up to a year, and a recovery phase of, again, 8 to 24 weeks. So the total commitment can be up to 2 years. The target is 200 couples completing 1 year of efficacy. We have a number of sites in the United States, 1 in South America, 4 in Europe, and 2 in Africa. The primary endpoint is prevention of pregnancy. The secondary endpoints are safety, side effects, and acceptability to both partners. Now, I'm just going to take you through what the guys do. They have a screening that requires 2 normal sperm counts of greater than 15 per mil. At week 0, the male partner begins the daily gel application. And then for the next, every 4 weeks, we were collecting sperm with the goal of getting sperm to be 0. And the men need 2 consecutive counts of less than 1 million per mil to enter efficacy. At E with a hash mark here, it's the week that they entered efficacy, a couple stops using any other method. And then R indicates that the couple has completed a year in efficacy. The man stops using the product, then enters recovery. So we were surprised compared to what we were expecting, which is a median or average sperm suppression to happen at about 12 weeks based on previous studies that had been published. And what we found was our median time to suppression is less than 8 weeks. And by 12 weeks and 15 weeks, we're at 80 and nearly 90% of suppression has occurred. But because we weren't expecting that early suppression, we have a lot of all the yellow boxes here indicate no data, meaning we don't have information about what the sperm count was at that time. But the next sperm count we got from all of these guys was 0. So it's quite possible that if we see 0 at 4 weeks or 7 weeks or even 9 weeks, that it might have been 0 at an earlier point in time. And if that's the case, if many of these were actually suppressed or less than 1 million, at least in some cases, it's clearly likely that this might have been less than 1 million much earlier. That would move the potential median time to suppression much earlier. So while we have 52 weeks now, 52% at 8 weeks, and only 30% at 6 weeks, we actually have some sites that have what I've now speculated without data might be the actual median time to suppression of 6 weeks or less, maybe even 5 weeks. And we do see that at some of our sites that have some more earlier time points. But we can use sperm check, which is going to be a tool for anybody who's pursuing a male contraceptive product that's looking at production or inhibition of production of sperm. Because a negative result here, no line, is less than 0.2 million per mil, and that's definitely safe level of sperm for contraception. So what about efficacy, reversibility, and acceptability? Well, I'd love to give you numbers, but we're still in the middle of it. We had projected that the efficacy or we would have a failure rate similar to combined hormonal contraceptive pills, which is about 8% because it requires daily application. What we've actually seen is something that is far more effective than what we expected. And we're really excited about that. The study's still ongoing, so I can't give you a number, but I hope we can soon. And reversibility, so far, everybody's recovering, and it's about 16 to 17 weeks median time to recovery. And return to fertility is not part of the protocol, but we've had a number of couples who wanted to have a baby after they finished their period of treatment. So, and they've had no problems getting pregnant and we've had quite a few healthy births now. Comments from completers. The males say, I wish I could keep using it. This, it was easy. And my favorite comment from the men is, can I re-enroll in the study? Because this is a 2-year study. And if they really want to re-enroll, I think it's a tremendous endorsement for the product. The females really liked it. And when they have to go back on their method, they're very unhappy. So this ticks a lot of boxes that we were hoping it would, and it's effective, reversible, safe, acceptable, and user controlled. The next step is what will FDA want, and we are hoping to speak with them soon about this, because the trial, we do think will be over by the end of this year. So this is the pipeline. Well, if this were a product for women, we know what the pathway is. It's 20,000 cycles. For a male contraceptive, we have no idea. And this, we hope to be able to get that information, and that everyone else will have an easier time once we are the sacrificial lamb to get across that finish line. I just want to acknowledge that this work is all a collaboration with the Population Council, and Regine Citric Ware is our partner in this, as well as the University of Washington, led by Stephanie Page, and the Institute, Lundquist Institute at Harvard UCLA, led by Christina Wang, and thank you. So I'll stop sharing now. I hope everybody heard that and that it was okay.
It sounded great. That was
Okay,
amazing,
good.
Diana, and so much information, and it's exciting to hear that your efficacy is even leaning towards greater than you expected. I feel like I have all these questions that I should jump into first, like technically, but I think seeing your slide about the comments you received from the men who participated and their partners, and then thinking back to some great videos I've seen of Kevin's from a couple of conferences, I guess I'm going to start there. Like, I think we're all, maybe this is my own personal beef, but hearing the men aren't interested and women won't trust them argument for so long, which we've been able to now counter with data thanks to Desireline and Alstonia's work to do the global market research study. But just the people part, we get emails all the time. We get emails from your subjects, from people who came out of your study saying, I want more, how can I help? Like,
really?
we had one guy that is and his partner that are basically saying, do more, like we need to be more active. And so they were so excited by it. And so I guess my question is to all of you, now that you've been in the clinic, people have reacted to your products. What does that feel like? And what do you think? I mean, it seems like such an obvious question, but I think it's worth talking about.
I think one of the moments, there have been many moments in this 6-year trial, which took 6 years mostly because of COVID, but it has been a process that took me from maybe a glass half full person. I mean, glass half empty to glass half full, and I'm not usually optimistic, but I feel like the comments from the users is the most powerful part, because having them tell you what it meant to them to be in the study is much more powerful than anything I can say about how great I think this product is. And I would say the other thing that was an eye-opener is we brought in some of our female method investigators to be part of this trial, and they have become incredible fans of this product. And their perspective on it is a little different, because they've seen, women who go through a year of a method in our trials, and at the end of it, they have to go on another method, and they say they really like the product. It'd be nice if it was out there, but they don't have the same anxiety that in the couple study with the male contraceptive, the women were so happy to be off a method, and they have so much anxiety at the end when they have to go back on a method that they didn't like in the first place. And now, that's palpable. And that's why I say, and people don't often think of it, this is a women's health issue. And we need to see it that way. It is men's health, but it's also women's health. And we need to see it as the couple who are going to be involved. This also the idea that men will be able to use this, young men will be able to use this before, they're in a relationship necessarily. But couples will be able to use this in a way that they don't have that option right now. And I'm really excited about that as an opportunity. I still, you all have experienced something happening in a petri dish and seeing the headlines, a product will be there in 5 years. It's it's a long process, and we started the Nest-T, both compounds had been in humans when we started our male. So we didn't have quite the same anxiety of nail biting when we, gave the first dose, but, no man had ever received Nesterone before. So it was a little bit nerve-wracking, but it's a long process because there are a lot of steps. And when we get into phase 3, it's still going to be another 5 years. Even if we have all the money in the world and we can activate all the sites in the world that can do this, plus a few that can't, and we can train them how to, it's going to take, because it's almost a 2-year process of showing we can, even if we can suppress them quickly, which we think we can in, 6 to 8 weeks instead of 12 to 24 weeks, that's a big difference. It's still a year of efficacy and then some time to show recovery. So I think there's a question. Hand up, Will.
I see Will, but I want to just real quickly, Will, before we get to you, I want to acknowledge, so we're coming up on time. It's 5 minutes to 1. I won't say that we had any preconceived notions or past experiences, but we do have 30 more minutes on this Zoom link. So for those of you who are able to stay on, please do. We'll keep the conversation going as long as people can stay on. For just real quick, if people do have to drop off, we want to thank you and feel free to reach out to all of us with any questions, or to MCI, me specifically, any of us, but just Heather at malecontraceptive.org or Kevin at malecontraceptive.org, and we can make any follow-up connections or share any information. And I guess just the one thing that I want to make sure we hear before everybody gets off is that, as exciting as all of the data that you've heard and all of the progress that you've heard today is, we're in a really critical spot, as Diana just mentioned briefly, with respect to funding of clinical trials moving forward. So this is something that as a community, MCI is very keen to be talking about in a very real way, because I've always been transparent about MCI. We fund $1.5 million a year. That is not enough to help with clinical trials beyond like first in human. So it's really getting to be a critical point for getting more investors, more donors to really take this space seriously. So, we know pharma's looking for de-risked products. There's still a pretty big gap to get there. So just putting that word out whenever we can, that we don't want to see the ebbs and flows that we've seen in the past with male contraception, because we are getting closer. And to your point, Diana, we need to temper that as well, but we would hate to see that momentum lost that you and Kevin and the YourChoice team have made. So I wanted to put that out before we lose people, and now we'll hush and take Will's question.
Hi, Diana. Thanks for the great work. I'm wondering if you can just expand a little bit on your thoughts around phase 3, being the first in our field to get to that exciting stage, given that this is a very different situation than most phase 3 clinical trials, right? We can't do true placebo control. There's not a standard of care to compare against. Has FDA given any guidance on what that should look like? And do you anticipate that it will look much significantly basically the same as your phase 2, just with larger numbers of people?
I think it will look like the phase 2 with larger numbers of people, but fewer assessments. I think it will be a more real world. They're going to want to imitate real world more than the clinical trial does. In the clinical trial, we're holding their hand pretty aggressively throughout the whole time. And in a phase 3, there are two schools of thought. I still want to hold their hand the whole time, and I want to get as much information scientifically out of them as I can. And there are other folks who want a much more, let's give them the drug and bring them back in at 12 weeks. And well, I don't want to lose all that time in between, because many of them, nearly all of them, will be suppressed by 12 weeks. Why make them wait 12 weeks when so many of them are already suppressed by 6 weeks? So I think we don't know what the phase 3 will look like until we have a meeting with FDA. But my expectation is it's going to be somewhat similar to what they expect for a new chemical entity in women, which is going to be some number of, thousands of months of safety for the men. And our safety profile is great. I mean, that's, I think, one of the most exciting parts is we are not seeing problems. We really aren't. And the men like it. I mean, not 100%. There are some men who don't like it. But that's, I think, nothing is 100%, but a really high percentage of individuals. Sometimes we've had the women have to discontinue for some unrelated reason. And if that happens, some of the men wanted to keep using the product, but we couldn't let them. But again, it's that we like it. We're, it's not burdensome. And so, are there any side effects or potential side effects? Really not much. The women love it. The men are not experiencing, some of them have some mood, a little bit of mood here and there, but most of them do not. Some of acne, but less than we expected because there is testosterone and that's associated with androgen treatment, but less than we expected. Everything we expected, we're seeing less than we expected, and a pretty happy. Libido increasing is considered an adverse event, but actually the men like it. Some of them have more energy. It's just not, it's good. It's not bad.
What about the other groups?
Charles?
Akash, and actually, can we get the same question from YourChoice and Contraline?
Akash, you want to go first or should I?
You can go. Oh, well, I can go. I was gonna let you go because you were unmuted. Yeah. So we have not yet seen. I mean, the point of me saying that we had our dose escalation review committee earlier today was that we would not continue to dose escalate if we had findings. So we're very grateful for that. But I think, like Diana said, the path is long, and so I think I'm grateful that we get to work in this space because there's never a dull moment. I think life is exciting out here.
Yeah, and for what we're doing, we've been really pleased with the safety profile. So pretty much all of the side effects that we see are tied to the procedure itself. And we've had virtually no adverse events tied to the device, which is the gel, which is really nice. So the side effects are expected and very similar to what men see after a vasectomy. So light bruising, light swelling. Most of the guys haven't had any pain in the study, which is actually, that was surprising to us, was not even mild pain. And yeah, the recovery profiles have been really, really kind of smooth as well.
How often do you collect sperm, Kevin?
How often do we collect sperm?
Yeah.
It's on a regular basis. So we collect, it's pretty frequent in the first few months. So like 2, 4, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, etc. And then as the study goes on, it gets less and less frequent. So every 3 to 6 months. But actually, we just also integrated sperm check into our trial this month. Last month. And so the patients in our study are now also going to be using the sperm check device in between the lab visits as well, if they want. Just another kind of.
That's available in Australia, or
it's actually not. It's not approved in Australia. We imported it as an investigational device, but it's not approved in Australia. And just a quick shout out. I'm really glad that Diana talked about sperm check as a diagnostic test. That was created by my co-founder, Dr. John Hare at the University of Virginia. And that was a major discovery that came out of UVA and the first FDA approved at-home sperm test.
So it's kind of really lemonade out of lemons, because that study, that antigen, which was incredibly specific, was not contraceptive, but they turned it into a sperm check. And what a great idea that was. What a wonderful thing. We have some questions for people.
Yeah, Charles, do you want to go ahead?
Okay, I'm sure. So my question is for Dana. Just like I mentioned before, I come from Nigeria, and here in Nigeria and in most other countries in Africa, there is this myth and misconceptions associated with family planning, even with the female methods that's existing. Because as a physician that work in the field of family planning intervention, one of our greatest challenge is actually getting the women to adopt this method, even though we give them free of charge to the women. So now I wanted to ask, based on the experience that your team have had with the clinical trial in Kenya and Zimbabwe, I wanted to know if maybe there's any specific challenge that you have encountered in trying to maybe get men to be part of the clinical trial here in Africa, to be specific.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of interest at both sites, and I think again it's really similar to other sites in that the women are willing participants and the men are really interested in trying this new thing. It's I would say that there were lessons learned at both sites because they had never done this kind of study before. And when we go into the phase 3, and that's true for all of our sites, even ones who had done a study before, they've learned in the process of doing this study how to advertise, how to figure out who's there because they want to be there and who's there for other reasons. Because I think there were perhaps in some of our sites, maybe Kansas in particular, there seemed to be a desire to get compensation rather than be in the study, and so sort of figuring out who's there to really be using this method versus who's there for some other reason is something that clinical trial sites need to be able to work out, and it's not simple. But we have some really successful couples at both Kenya and Zimbabwe, and they really would love to stay on the product if they could. I think there's really high interest in those populations. Again, not for everybody, but for some segment of the population who's interested in a couple sharing approach to contraception. And we will have specific acceptability data at the end of the study from all of the participants, and we'll do that site by site as well as overall.
My favorite was the WHO hormonal study where they did acceptability of their injectable product. It was like a bi-monthly injection, and they found 85% of men still wanted it after the end of the trial. And I can't imagine that you have less than that, probably higher than 85%.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that one thing I will say about that number is it's 85% of the people who entered efficacy. And that's not 85% of the people who enrolled. So
got it.
So
that's a good,
and that will be the case in our trial and anybody else's trial as well. If people discontinue, they're sort of maybe discontinuing for an adverse event. Many times, many of the people who discontinued in our study discontinued not because they wanted to, but there were other reasons, or it was an intense study and they had lives and they got a new job, they couldn't keep up with the visits, or they moved. If they moved, and that was a big problem actually in Kenya, there was a lot of people moving out of the catchment area. So that can be a problem for doing a trial, not necessarily, down the road in the real world.
I want to make sure we give Robert a quick opportunity to answer or ask his question as well, if that's okay. Go ahead, Robert.
Thanks, Heather. Hi, Diana. My name is Robert Goldman. Thank you so much for the work that you are doing in this field. I find it very, very fascinating. 3 questions for you. if you have the ability to answer them. How did your organization choose the location for application, shoulder versus inner thigh, for example? Are there any concerns with transference of the T to the female partner, as it can, remain on clothing for quite some time? And third, what type of sites were participating in your phase 2 trial? Were they mostly academic, urological focused, or primary care clinics? Thank you.
Okay, so the first one. I can answer all of them, but I can't
Great.
remember them all.
The first one was location of administration. I jotted it
Oh,
down.
yeah, the location of administration, testosterone gel that's used for low T is applied to the shoulders. So we initially, when we were doing, we had two separate gels. So the testosterone was applied to the shoulders as it was directed, and the nesterone gel was applied to the abdomen. It could be applied anywhere. We don't want it to be transferred to the woman, and the shoulder is easily covered up with a t-shirt. So we had to do a transference study, and we showed that if they showered, then, we don't want them to use it and then shower, because that removes the drug from the skin too soon. But if they, use it, spend the day and then shower before intimate contact, that works. If they wear a t-shirt, the women are fully protected. So it doesn't, we don't seem to see transfer. We do take blood from the women throughout the study, and we have seen small amounts of transfer of testosterone in a small population of the participants, probably indicating they weren't following directions about the t-shirt. But, if you do protect, then it's okay. And you do have to wash your hands, of course, after using the product. How we chose the sites. We had a couple of urologic directed sites. They weren't as successful as our contraceptive family planning sites. Initially, we were in our male sites, or sites that some of them had some experience with the WHO trial, like Edinburgh and Manchester were involved in that trial. And Bologna, Italy as well. Not the site in Sweden. The site in Sweden is a female method, and they've had tons of experience with female method. They were incredibly successful in this study with men. And we brought in as I showed at the beginning, we have a pipeline of products for women. So we have 16 sites that do female method development. We brought 8 of them into our trial, and several of them have been incredibly successful. Again, it is a learning curve, and they will all be much more successful in the next time, the next phase of this trial. And I think they're really enthusiastic about being part of the phase 3 trial. Did I answer all 3?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm curious, are there any other questions queued up, or anything anyone wants to?
Yeah, if I could, I guess we have earlier heard that, of course, the clinical trials, are very, very expensive. And so I guess, what's the prospect of, I guess, contraceptives for men moving forward in light of, the need to raise considerable funds to carry out those new studies? I guess if somebody has an opinion on that, particularly, I guess, guys from industry, but Diana, I don't know in how far, and your NICHD can get involved in things.
Well, NICHD, unfortunately, although they want to support male contraception, there's a limited amount of funding there, and I know, and Heather knows, that there is congressional interest in putting more money into this, but the interest hasn't been followed up with extra money. And it's one of the reasons why I'd like the world to be able to see this as just not a men's health, but it's a women's health issue, because there's a lot of money pouring into that, but we're not able to access it. And and I feel like they're not seeing this as a place to put it. So it would be great if you have congressional contacts to try to, get that activated. I think that when our trial results are published, it may go a long way to getting more enthusiasm, because right now it's kind of, I can't say as much as I want to say about, what our effectiveness is and all. But I think when that comes out in a publication, it may get people more excited.
But from what you have hinted at, you have increased the bar of efficacy from the female pill to being even higher. And
well, the female pill, it's a typical use thing. And you're going to, I hope, experience the same thing we do, which is that this is a forgiving method. And that if it's requiring a daily use and they'd miss a couple days, it's not like the sperm are all sitting there in a compartment waiting to get out, like the egg is.
Yeah.
It's, they have to start from scratch, and it's going to take a while, and they can plan, they can do something to mitigate the sperm that are coming 8 weeks down the road.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to find the same thing. Sperm check is an incredibly useful tool in reducing the expense of needing so many visits to the clinic with, sperm counts that, especially I think in phase 3, I think that's going to help a lot. And so you'll use that if sperm, suppression is your end point, you'll be able to use that and cut the cost of some of those clinic visits, I hope.
Diana, from your lips to God's ears, really.
Can I ask real quick? I saw Kevin came off mute. I'm curious what Kevin.
I wanted to talk about Gunda's question around finance. Where's the money going to come from to fund the future trials, and talk a little bit about the state of the industry. When I started Contraline in 2015 and I started pitching venture capitalists, I didn't realize that up till that point, there really weren't any startups going to VCs talking about male contraception. Like, the VCs were funding biotech, did not know this was a problem. And back then I was getting a lot of feedback like, is this a problem? Does this need to be solved? And things like that. And I had to educate them on the interest, the demand, the market opportunity. And I think that's obviously, gone a long way, because Contraline and YourChoice, and hopefully a few of these other startups that are popping up will be successful in their fundraising efforts. But you have to realize that, the amount of money that, for example, Akash and myself have raised is on the order of a few 10 millions of dollars, not hundreds of millions of dollars. Whereas in other fields like GLP-1s, for example, you see every single week or every other week, another company is raising $100 million round of financing to do a GLP-1 trial, and so I think that, Diana, investors are starting to see that male contraception is a women's health issue. Both Akash and I have women's health focused VC funds that are investors in our companies. But unfortunately, those funds are a little bit on the smaller side. They're not ready to write a massive check to fund a phase 3 trial. And so, I think there is going to be some heavy lifting that we have to do to go to these bigger biotech funds and raise the money we need to do the future trials. I think it's doable. I'm optimistic about it, given all the work that you've heard here today. But I just want to say that is what's ahead of us.
So could I just make one comment? I would say, of course, we can do individual, lobbying, from our state. But I wonder whether could also be a role for MCI to connect with, congressional people and lobby for the male contraception. I don't know. You may have already done this, but it just occurred to me, in the context of this discussion.
Yeah, well, it is. We are at a crossroads now with 3 products in the clinic. I think this is really exciting because the proof of concept is incredibly exciting. And I think as these like I said, when your paper comes out, when ours comes out, Kevin's comes out, I really think that's going to energize the field so much more than, what happened after WHO's sort of kind of disastrous stopping the study moment. It really was a chilling effect on the field. And now I think we're in such a positive zone. I hope we can capitalize on it and move forward.
But I think I'll just jump on Gunda's point there too, though, that and I do think you're right. The academic approach of the papers coming out. I mean, there's an element that we're holding ourselves back a bit, right? Because we don't share data in advance because everybody's seeking that big publication rather than sort of trying to, I don't know, you could argue that there's different perspectives on what the priorities should be. So I think to Gunda's point, doing some advocacy, and we have not historically been big into policy advocacy, but it is something we've been trying to grow into, Gunda. And I think I saw Bo Proctor on here somewhere, and that gentleman has been a huge benefit to us as getting us started early on in understanding how we can take on a bigger role. So we would be happy to continue to grow that. We've had some fellows that have been interested in this as well. So I do think that we have, so the contraceptive product development space has been really anchored in the academic and the nonprofit, the international aid sort of space. And so there's a cadence to how the work has always been done. And I think that we need to look at shaking things up a bit and trying to be a little bit more forward with what the need is. We need to be transparent about what the need is, that, like we were saying earlier, if we don't get funding for these clinical trials to move forward, then we're stuck. And so we need to be looking at bringing in new investors, and those folks aren't looking at papers a lot. They're looking for pitches. They're looking for, people to be networking at events. And that's just not, as a field, guilty as charged as well, something we're used to doing. We're used to kind of talking to each other more. And so we really have to branch out on that a bit more. And
we need an advocacy group, we really,
and that's where the patients will come in. But
yeah,
also
if they can get, to their, it's sort of what the AIDS group did so long ago. They were activists, and they really changed the landscape for how products got approved.
Maybe the three of us should do a male contraception life cycle, kind of like the AIDS life cycle. Raise cash, bike across California to cash for male contraception.
Here you go, you guys, look there's a question in the chat. I'm sorry to interrupt, Akash, but what I wonder, thank you, Sonia. Sonia asks a really great question. So she's asking the group, what kinds of stories would you all like to see being shared and told about male contraceptives for a general audience? Are you seeing any misconceptions or missed opportunities in the ways that male contraception is being written about? And I think, yeah, Akash, do you want to?
Well, I can tell you about one story that lives in my mind rent-free, is Gunda's work when it was published at ACS was published in the New York Times March 25th, 2022. I remember that because March 26th is my birthday. So I was just like right before. What a present. That weekend, the Washington Post came out with an article where a woman wrote an op-ed where she said, I asked one male friend if he would use a male contraceptive, and he said he would only use it if it also gave him an erection. And I was like, cool story, bro. Like, thank you for the market research of one person that you did. Screw all the other research that everyone else has done in the field. Thank you also for not doing a Google research or like doing any Google searching for, is there a demand for male contraception? But you got an op-ed out there on one man, N of one. If I wanted to write that paper, I wonder what the world would look like. And so, yes, there are people who clearly write stories that don't make sense. And I think it is just a lot harder to call out stories that don't make sense. And I think also, if I'm not mistaken, the Washington Post also happened to have written an article that suggested that TikTok is also passing along fake news about female contraception in simply in women simply stating the side effect profiles that they had already that have otherwise already been known within the field. So maybe a lot of my shade is towards the Washington Post, but it is essentially there continues to be, I think, misconceptions in the field for contraception.
Well, for women's method, it's not misconceptions, it's disinformation. It's deliberate attempts to say things that are not right, that are not correct, and to spread false information because they are anti-contraception. That's huge on TikTok, and it's appalling. I don't know that there's quite as much anti-male contraception effort out there yet, just perhaps because it's not, as widely used. But there is a definite anti-contraception element in the world. The Reddit guy who was in our study, who did a blog, got a lot of really interesting misconception questions of like, well, you're not going to get your sperm back, or you're going to do permanent damage to the testes and all these things. There's no evidence for any of that, but that fear is out there.
Lonnie, did you have a question?
It's actually just a comment related to answer this question. Misinformation and misguided advice. I completely agree with both of you, Akash and Diana. But I think in answer to that question, there's a missed opportunity that the field isn't. All the discussion around, especially in the US now, but worldwide, in my opinion, the best way to reduce abortion and to support freedom of choice is with better contraception methods. And I think the data coming out of the, just to be specific to male contraception, the data coming out of Steve's study, the Desire Line, the Gates and MCI funded demand research is going to show that the single biggest factor for reducing unintended pregnancies, which by analogy will reduce the need for abortions, will be the introduction of a new method. So I would love it if every article that talked about abortion actually ended with a line or a paragraph that said, if only we had new male methods. To me, that would be a great way to get it out there.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Lonnie. And we have 3 minutes left. So I guess real quickly, Kevin, we haven't heard from you in a hot minute. So I want to give you a chance to have any sort of final thoughts that you might have.
I think the next few years are going to be really big for the field, and I'm excited. I don't really have any final words per se, but I'm privileged to be a part of this group of people working in this field. I mean, it's funny when people ask me, oh, how many people attend the conference on male contraception in Paris or coming up in New York? And it's like, I think it's like less than 100 people that are even thinking about this problem worldwide, and so I'm just, I think I really appreciate everyone for the collaborative effort, and I think we need to raise the tides to bring more funding as well as bring more eyes on this space so that we can get to the finish line, all of us.
Thanks, Kevin. Closing thoughts. Diana, you want to go next?
Just that, your criticism that we are academics wanting to publish is real. And, I struggle against it every day because I'd much rather get this out there. And we tiptoe up to the line of trying to reveal as much as we can in advance of not revealing anything prior to submitting a publication to a high-profile journal that doesn't want you to publish anything before you. Yeah, it's a problem.
I didn't mean that as a harsh
critique. No,
reality of the
it's
situation.
It's a reality. It's a big reality, and it does hold the field back, in my view.
Thanks, Diana.
In some ways, although being in a high-profile publication is useful then for getting the word out. So
yeah, thanks. And Akash?
I'll try and marry Kevin and Diana's thoughts of just, I think this will be a big year for us, and as publications either from Diana, Kevin, or ourselves comes out, I think it establishes the field and the path for the development of a male method, because I don't think the question of I don't think there's a question I don't think there has ever been a question as to whether male contraception is a thing. Maybe perceptions have changed. I don't necessarily think so. I think it is mainly, is there a clear path to move that product forward, or is it just, and part of it is, I think, us just blindly trying to find the path forward. But I think once that continues to get blazoned forward, I think with additional data, what is the next reason that we can hear about why people are not going to put cash in for the development of a male method?
Yeah, we've got it all now.
Yeah, it's kind of like, all right, it's time to cook. Let's go.
Well, thank you all so much, you guys, and the panel again. Congratulations to you all, and thank you for sticking with it. It's been an uphill climb for all of you, and it's so exciting to be here and celebrating the successes that you all have had. And thank you to the over 40 and it's sometimes 50 plus people that stuck with us beyond the time. So everyone here is very collaborative and open to outreach. So again, I'll start with that if you have any questions, you can find any one of us on this panel and we'll be happy to connect you. So everybody have a great weekend and thanks for joining.